Yeah, I'm back. I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth about the whole thing on cheap gigs. Now, a cheap gig would be like a gig basically with no guarantee or very low pay. So you take the ultimate thing would be like busking, live streaming nowadays. There's no guarantee, right? Or working at a club like, say, on Bourbon Street or Frenchman Street in New Orleans, where it's like $20 a set, plus tips, plus percentage of the bar, or just percentage of the bar plus tips. So I know people who worked over, including myself, who worked in the past for $10 a set and hustled tips on these little jobs, and you can make $100 if you really busted your nut, all the way up to 250 and $300 a night. But it's a low guarantee, so most people will rather prefer to do a gig that paid say 150 or $200 guaranteed. And then whenever there's hard times, people start complaining about people undercutting them and working at these cheap gig things. But at the same time, they'll also do it. And then they'll go like, hey, well, if we all stuck together and had a union, we could all raise the price. Well, that just isn't going to happen. I joined the union here a while ago, and I remember when I joined, this was quite a few years ago, over 30 years ago, and you had to swear that you wouldn't work non-union gigs, in other words, cheap gigs. So I felt uncomfortable with that because I knew I'd keep working cheap gigs, which I did. And when I swore, when I was had to swear in front of the board, some of the guys on the board I knew and I had played cheap gigs with. So it's kind of a sham. So anyway, I've also tried to hire people sometimes to offer them a pretty good gig, and they would say, well, I can't really do that one because that's maybe not quite enough, for me to work, put on a suit and work. But yet, you go down to a club and you see them in Innuendo paying for $10 a set and, you know, chips or whatever to do it. So what can you do? I mean, they're here. If you think that it's gonna be kumbaya and people are gonna all like hold out for more money, that's just not gonna happen because there's always somebody who's gonna work free or at a low rate. It starts when you're young. Like when you're a kid, if you're real good, your parents bring you out to play. You play for free. You don't think anything about it because you love to play. That's the problem. The musicians really like to play. Like if your friend says, hey, I got this little project going, come on down to such and such club. They don't pay much money, but we'll have a good time. You'll agree to do it. So you do it. And if you do it, don't complain. Don't like come up around other musicians putting down other people who are working cheap. I mean, everybody does it or has done it. If you get to the point where you don't have to do it, like I know people who won't play cheap gigs, I can say good for them. Um, good for anybody. I mean, I actually don't like working cheap gigs, but I do it once in a great while because I don't know, I'm a musician. I want to work, I guess. Sad part is a lot of people who do it uh, really, really are just doing it because that's the only gig that they will play. Maybe they're part-time musicians, and it's kind of rough on the full-time musicians because they have to play the cheap gigs. But that's the way it is. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just the way it is. So don't get upset over it. Don't sit around on the gig going, to your other musician, oh, so and so is working a cheap gig, when darn well you've done it yourself. It's kind of a sad thing. And that's why a lot of people, especially nowadays with the club scene, just, cratering, take their talents and do something else rather than play cheap gigs. I don't blame them, because let's face it, nobody likes to work for nothing, but sometimes it happens. And that's the way it is. So don't get mad at other people for doing it. And if you don't have to do it, that's great. You set your own price, right? If you're in a cover band making $500 to play a wedding, that's your rate. But if you go around and on a Tuesday night when it's slow and play for free or go to a jam session, which is another form of a cheap gig, right? When, you play for free, the band leader, and I've led jam sessions, get paid. Usually not a whole lot, but you get paid. And the other guys are making the scene happening. They don't get paid. There's another, just part of our DNA. Play cheap occasionally, and that's the way it is. So you got to mix in the good paying gigs with the cheap gigs, I guess, and don't complain about it to other people when they probably playing cheap gigs also. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth about cheap gigs. Till next time.